hope everyone is enjoying Brain Awareness Week, which is intended to get people, and especially young people, excited about the brain and studying it. And I want to share something from my own experience to show how complex the brain is, and maybe to inspire people to study it and to raise the question, do we know everything that there is to know about the brain? I think not. We have many things to discover. So this starts with my course in neurophysiology. I started medical school very young. In the second year I was 18 years old. And to me, anatomy was difficult, but neuroanatomy especially, because there are so many cells and structures and nuclei, and I was overwhelmed by all of the subjects that we have to study, the new experiences, clinics, dissections, meeting new people. So not always could I concentrate well and study enough to understand the material thoroughly. And in my neurophysiology exam, I had a question about the pyramidal tract, and I told my professor, who was an old and stern lady, that the pyramidal tract starts from the hippocampus, and she was upset, and she told me to go home and study again and retake the exam. And when I told my dad, who was a physician, I thought that he would be upset, but he just smiled and said, well, it's okay, you will learn it. And I did learn it, because afterwards I had to retake the exam, and also later I became a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist. Now when I think, both we know that the pyramidal tract starts from the cortex. It starts from the pyramidal neurons, but there are pyramidal neurons both in the cortex and in the hippocampus. So perhaps this was not so outlandish. So, in this respect, I want to say something about the pyramidal tract in the hippocampus, and since I think it's always good to illustrate, I have this atlas of the structure of the human brain, which is Oxford University Press, which I used when I studied for my USMLE test. And I have a core text of neuroanatomy. And why I think that what I said was not so outlandish. First, to say something about the pyramidal tract. I made a few notes here. The pyramidal tract is primarily involved in voluntary motor control, and it is believed that it does not have direct connections with the hippocampus, which is a structure crucial for memory and spatial navigation. As extensive neuroanatomical research, including tract tracing studies, confirm that there are no direct pathways. So, to say about the pyramidal tract in its function. First, the pyramidal tract consists of fibers which arise from the pyramidal cells in the cerebral cortex, pass through the medullary pyramid, and descend into the spinal cord. And at the medullary level, each pyramid consists of about 1,000,000 fibers, and about 2/3 of these fibers have appreciable myelin sheaths. And here is a schematic diagram of the lateral and anterior corticospinal tracts. Now don't worry, I'm saying too many things, but it's quite complicated. There is a lateral and anterior. So here is the brain. And the pyramidal tract starts from the motor cortex and goes all the way down into the medulla and the spinal cord. And we can see this here. And it controls the movement. And there is a anterior and a lateral corticospinal tract. And to say something more about them, the pyramidal tract, its function, originates, as we saw from the book, in the motor cortex, and primarily serves to transmit motor commands from the brain to the spinal cord, and they control the voluntary movement. Of course, this is important in everyday life, but being a ballerina, I think this is very important, that all of the movements are controlled by the pyramidal tract. And now, so my question in physiology was, where does the pyramidal tract start from? And instead of saying that it starts from the motor cortex, I said that it starts from the hippocampus. Now let's see something about the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a vital part of the limbic system, and it plays a crucial role in spatial memory, episodic memory, and other memory-related functions, as well as in emotions. However, being a ballerina, I know that spatial memory is very important. How you orient your movements in space. Also, memory, learning, and retrieval are very important to learn the choreography. So in my mind, although extensive neuroanatomical studies don't find any connections between the hippocampus and the pyramidal tract, I am almost convinced that they must interact somehow, because learning and memory are very important in memorizing the different movements and choreographies in ballet. And now to show you something about the hippocampus, and also that emotions are very important in learning. When you love something, you learn better, and you learn your movements better if you are passionate passionate and if emotions are involved. And now to look again at the cortex of neuroanatomy. Here is the hippocampus, which is a horse-shaped structure, and here we can also see through a sagittal view of the hippocampus, which is like a seahorse. You can see from the figure. So this is another figure of the hippocampus here, like a seahorse-shaped structure. And in this atlas, I just wanted to show you for example, here is a schematic drawing of a section through the brain. This is a horizontal brain section in plane of computerized tomography. Here is the CT scan of the brain, computerized tomography. And so here we can see the motor cortex, and we can see the hippocampus, and here we can see the cerebellum. And so instead of saying that the corticospinal or pyramidal tract starts from here, I told my professor that the corticospinal tract or the pyramidal tract starts from the hippocampus. Both of them have pyramidal cells. And so to say something about the pyramidal cells. Now to see how complicated the brain is, there are different structures such as the motor cortex, the hippocampus. The different structures are connected with tracts, and the brain cells are very different in size and in appearance and in function, and it's very complicated. This is the cerebral cortex, where we can find the pyramidal neurons, which give origin to the pyramidal tract. So here you can see some of the neurons are like pyramids. The pyramidal cells, which are most characteristic of the cortex, have the form of a pyramid. And an apical dendrite extends upward toward the pile surface, and numerous basal dendrites project horizontally from the cell body. The axon emerges from the base of the cell and enters the white matter. So this is very interesting, and there are different stainings such as the Nissl stain to distinguish the different types of neurons. And so to get back to the origin of the pyramidal tract, the motor cortex and the hippocampus and the connections between them, which is my idea that both are involved in movement and in ballet, especially in learning of movement. But perhaps they indeed don't have direct or indirect connection. The hippocampal formation, as we said, plays a crucial role in forming spatial memory. Extensive neuroanatomical research, including tract tracing studies, demonstrate that there are no direct anatomically established pathways hippocampus and motor regions of the cortex indirectly interact with other brain structures and pathways such as the thalamus and prefrontal cortex, which integrate motor control and spatial memory. So, I hope that this brief introduction to two brain structures and tracts involved in movement and in learning and memory sparked your interest in learning more about the brain and its many functions and how it helps us to live our life, to dance, to think, to plan, to read, and to enjoy life. Thank you.